AI for Environmental Consulting series. And we're going to specifically do the end of what was our last session that I said we were not going to finish. And that's to do a couple of case studies for the remote use of data collection that we can get from various different kinds of tools. So it's not just using artificial intelligence, AI, for writing things or analyzing data, but rather it's for actually helping to collect data and um, and also to show how remote sensors operate in various different circumstances. So anyway, I'm going to get to that in a second. Before that, I'm going to do something which is kind of interesting. I got something coming across on my. We're going to talk about a um, situation over the last 6 weeks. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to blow up my screen first and then share my screen. And Mark, can you see my screen with Wilma, which is my AI assistant?
Yep.
And the information there, that's cool. We're going to first go to LinkedIn. And one of the things that I've been doing for about 6 weeks now, which prior to that I didn't do really much at all, is that I've been consistently posting on LinkedIn. And here is a post that was made earlier today. And it's interesting. This should be updated because this is showing this being the previous post. It's not that important, but let's just scroll down once again and see if we. This, by the way, I am not in any need of making a payment to LinkedIn. It is so stupid. I already own their premium version. Here we go. This is the post that I did today because last week I did a screw up and I posted this image right here. I'll show it in a bigger level, which is an AI image, and it's of of industrial site that's in disrepair, that is going to be remediated. And this was my post from yesterday where I was actually apologizing for it. But what do you notice that's weird here, Mark?
3 hands.
Yeah, she's got 3 arms. So this is an AI generated image, and I didn't catch the fact that she's got 3 arms. And so, I basically said what a screwball that guy is. That lady has 3 arms. But it was really interesting how many comments that I got related to how stupid I was and everything. And that's fine. But here's what's interesting. It caused people to look at it. They actually read it. It got 10 times as much attention because of mistake. One mistake. It's crazy what people are looking for when they're looking at things on the internet. I think it's when they're reading books. They want to poke holes in things. They want to be negative about people. And I'm not going to show some of the comments. Some of them were hostile. They're mean. Some were just unknowledgeable, just you name it. But anyway, what I mainly wanted to show here was that if you want to have a fun read, pretty much every day, I publish a very short post or an article. And there are two kinds of posts that you can make on LinkedIn. One is called an article, and that's longer. This is one that's an article because it's got a capitalized title. It's got a description of who wrote it and so on, and then all of the article itself, and then you can put a call to action, which we did here. And then I'm going to back up here to show you again some of the previous ones because I've been doing different kinds. This one happened to be about the mistake in using AI in the environmental sciences. But let me just show you a few of the others. This was again my other apology for this article. But here was one that I did just again a couple days ago. But don't look at the dates here; those aren't all accurate. About the environmental consulting industry and how AI is used in it, which is what our topic is about. Let's just quickly look at this one. And notice there's not the image that's real prominent, not the capitalized title. So this is what's called a post. And this is, again, I used AI to help me, but then I wrote most of this. So here's an example of something that's germane for our series here. The environmental consulting industry just got a new hire. His name or her name is AI. Doesn't replace the field consultant who stood in the contaminated soil and knows what it smells like. It doesn't replace the wetland scientist who can read a sedge community from a glance. Sedge is a kind of aquatic vegetation, but it does something they can't do in a day. Scan 10,000 acres of satellite imagery. Flag anomalies in vegetation stress. Map NDVI. We're going to talk about what that means. I'll describe NDVI a little bit later. Changes over 24 months and deliver a working hypothesis before the boots ever hit the ground. So in other words, help you know what you're looking at when you go out in the field. The firms winning in this space aren't the ones with the most PhDs. They're the ones who figured out how to combine deep expertise with AI-powered insight. That's not a threat to environmental professionals. That's the upgrade that we've been waiting for. The question isn't whether AI belongs in environmental consulting. The question is which firms will use it first and which ones will be playing catch up in 3 years. I know which side I want to be on, and then obviously a little bit more from me. So that's just another example of, again, an article written relatively recently, but here's some others I've done. This is about buying my new site at Rockville. And here's the post with the three-legged lady, or three-armed lady, I mean. Here's another one. I sort of go back and forth, and this is a tribute to Dennis Weaver and talking about Dennis. Here's our site. This is actually very close to what our entry area looked like about 2 weeks ago. 2 shipping containers with some chain link fence to keep animals in between the containers, and then nothing else. And we're just building from there. That's where we've started. That's the canvas that we have. Here's another one where it's talking about the use of AI in environmental consulting. Another one with that use. This is a pretty cool one where obviously an AI image, but it shows a very overgrazed, pockmarked sort of area compared to what it could look like if it's properly managed next to it. So this would be like a war-torn area in Gaza would be, or something in the Syria near Damascus. And other things like that. Anyway, they're about 30-second reads for most of these articles, and you can take your time and go in and look at them. So we are now going to move to specifically the presentation, and I don't know why my button bar is not showing up down here at the bottom of the page, but let's just put this. This was another topic I was dealing with. But there we go. Here's the PowerPoint. And here is the presentation. And here's what we're going to do, which every time I do these, I see there's some kind of a mistake on one page or another. This one, I didn't change the fact that I used to do these all the time, and I used International Risk Group as the company, and that company doesn't even exist anymore. But obviously, I should have changed that to Seed or Mountain Sky Ranch or something, and I didn't. Anyway, so our topic today is going to be remote sensing and geospatial AI. Whoa, that's a heck of a long word. But before I go much further here, any questions that people in the audience have early on about the first 5 sessions that we did about AI and environmental professionals? Well, I assume Mark will let me know if there's anything coming in and anything that's new, and I'm just going to keep moving here. So this isn't going to be 60 minutes, close to it though. We're going to start out with some foundations about what is remote sensing. That's what we're really going to be talking about here, and not just using AI for managing information and data. Then we're going to do one demo that we're calling AI demo number 1. And that's going to be used to interpret satellite imagery. So that'll be the first thing that we do. Then we're going to talk about how can that kind of activity be used to deal with topics like deforestation, climate change, habitat degradation, wetland degradation, or a term that that I spend a lot of time with, brownfields, sites that have been somehow damaged by their previous use. Then we'll do a second hands-on demo where we'll actually use geographic information systems workflow along with AI to do a real site analysis and a live walkthrough of it. And then finally, we'll talk about what are some of the benefits, the limits, what are the ethics involved, and then deal with your questions and kind of where is this all headed. Do this that often, but I was just going to start out today and just say let's review again why we do this and what is this whole topic of ecolonomics, or what something is economic. Essentially, it's making a little money, making the planet better. But here's another way to look at it, which is, oops, back up here. Sorry, back to this slide. Trying to move my image slide to another monitor. Yeah, a little broader way to describe economic. If you're not getting paid for what you're doing work-wise, and this is for environmental consultants, it's not a business, it's a charity. You want to be running a business, not a charity. If you're really doing it economically, the work has got to help. It's got to make the land measurably better. And then finally, it's got to be able to scale. In AI is where this can come in. Remote sensing also is, how can a small firm compete with the giants? And that's by really using technology that they would know how to use also, but maybe they get lazy and they're not using it in the same way that you might. So again, we're going to first talk about remote sensing. What is it, why it matters, and what data you can actually use. So here's the three main types of remote sensing devices. You have satellites, and there's a whole list, much bigger than this, of the ones that are essentially global and that have been out there for either a short period of time or a very long period of time. And interestingly, it talks about repeating visits every few days. Some of them even repeat a visit more frequently than that, excuse me. But there are thousands and thousands of satellites, some of which is jobs. One called Landsat, another called Sentinel, another called Planet, that are there to just be collecting data about our Earth, and not in a global security sense or, weather sense even, but about the land itself. Second category of remote sensing in equipment is aircraft and drones. And drones are really probably beginning to win this situation in terms of doing more work than even airplanes do. They can be flown without pilots on board. They can go places that airplanes can't. They can be taken down or put up very rapidly. So they're probably even more common now than aircraft are. They all of the data obtained by aircraft and drones compared to that obtained by satellites has got higher resolution because it's closer to the Earth. It's got on-demand information. You can use information it collects and immediately be making decisions about certain things that the imagery is showing you. It uses a combination of sensing, LiDAR, multispectral, so all across the visual, the visual frequency range, and thermal, how hot or cold is something. So, and then whoever's running those satellites remotely from the Earth can control when and where the different kinds of information that are being collected are collected. Finally, the third kind of sensors are ground sensors, those that are fixed stations or water probes that maybe aren't fixed. They're put down in the water and they can move. They can move with flow. They can move with tides, a number of those. Also, balloons that could be used for air quality and are at the whim of the wind, essentially, but are disposable. So once they've finished their flights, they essentially crash somewhere, and the data has already been taken from them to a central collection location. The data from all three of these kinds of data collection that make up the broad term of remote sensing is coming all the time. And so having AI to be able to analyze it thousands of times faster than humans would be able to is incredibly valuable in today's scientific world. So just like there's three general types of remote sensing equipment, there are also two different categories. One is one that is passive. In other words, it it reads what is reflected back to it. So a pulse is sent from the satellite or the remote device, the drone, whatever it might be, and it bounces off whatever it encounters on the earth, a plant, an animal, a body of water, a piece of dirt, and it reflects that image back to the camera. And it happens very quickly so that as the earth moves, the camera, it can be stationary, or maybe the camera moves with the earth. It does need sunlight, and it can't work with clouds or at night. So these are examples that we have that are the different kinds of satellites: Landsat, Sentinel-2, and MODIS. And those are the three most commonly that people are aware of. These are best for determining vegetation health, land cover, and water quality. You can really see a lot about water quality. Is there all kinds of bad discharge, as we call it, from a shrimp farm or a tilapia farm in somewhere in the world where it's going out of some kind of an inland water body, a pond, a pool, and directly into the ocean. You're going to be able to see what the vegetation health off the shore was, vegetation being algae in this case. Then the second kind of sensor is one that has an active sensor, which means that it isn't reading what's reflected, it's sending its own signal. And these are examples of radar, LiDAR, sonar, all of them with the R ending. And radar would be mainly from satellites, LiDAR from either drones or satellites, sonar in the water, so coming from ships or smaller boats that are sending out the signal. Active sensors work day and night, day or night. And so it isn't just day and night, they work sometimes only during day or at night or during some certain time frame. They see through clouds. Clouds are irrelevant, so you can have a heavy cloud cover. Sentinel-1, which is another one of the information gathering satellites that's out there, Jetty, which is another one, and airborne LiDAR are all examples of active sending their own signals devices. These are better for topography measurements, biomass measurements, flooding, and subsidence, so ground movement of some kind or another. So these are what I'm going to call the geospatial toolkit that that you could get from things that are out there. Almost all of this is free. Now, there are paid versions, which some people will use when they really want to gain more than anything speed. Sometimes it's to gain the access to more information because they're throttled when they reach a certain maximum, certain limit. Some of these are paid and some are free. So we've talked about the top one a little. You've seen me use it multiple times. A USGS Earth Explorer. We're going to use Copernicus today. That's one I didn't use very much before I learned about it probably 6 months ago. And then Google Earth I've used for years and years and years. What kind of information can you get You can get baseline information. You can get time series, certain single site, and what were the data you collected today versus what you collected a week ago versus what you collected 3 weeks ago, which is versus what you collected a year ago. We haven't talked much about geographic information sensing software. Most of that software can be sent out with a drone or a airplane and can remotely take samples. These have boundaries. You have to pay for them typically. There is a free version of QGIS, but most often they're a little more sophisticated than what the free satellite data would be. The next one is same kinds of companies that provide the GIS software, but they're cloud platforms. Basically, they're storage places where you can take large amounts of data without having to have local storage for them. So Amazon Web Services, AWS, Open Data as an example. Google obviously has its own storage circumstances that are relatively inexpensive still from all these big providers. This next one's one you don't think about as much, but AI machine vision. So this would be where you're using AI more in the background to help you ask the right questions and know what the right data to collect is. And then the more hands-on type of equipment, the field and instruments that you would use, IoTs, could be operated by hand, by people in the field, by drones. They include things like weather stations, where there's just sensors that are collecting data 24/7, so they can be reported to the day-to-day people that use that data, weather people, and so on. Again, these are more hands-off kinds of data and are taken on the ground more often than not. So there's 4 different kinds of what we call resolutions that define the data that you can get, which means how far away or how small can an object be. So here gives some of that. So a spatial, how small of an object. Landsat can see down to 30 meters in size, so it's not probably small enough in many cases. Sentinel can see down to 10-meter size for its patterns and its information that it's collecting. And drones can see down to 2 centimeters, very small distance, that size. Second thing that's there's a resolution too. Resolution means how small can you see things down to. So the second one is temporal, time frame. Landsat goes over the same location every 16 days. Sentinel goes over it every 5 days. And then drones on demand go on it when you tell them to. And then how you set up to program them. How many spectral wavelengths does it capture? And they're really very specific. So, for example, the Copernicus data can be red, green, and blue bands, and you combine those, and you essentially get every color of the rainbow. Another way that a broad array of colors is described as being multispectral. And then hyperspectral is the most focused and the most unique because it actually breaks wavelengths down to as little as 100th of the size that you would be putting into your field for your golf game. And then finally, radiometric, as a resolution, it measures brightness. So it's a device that will remotely measure how bright something is by basically, again, a rebound, repeating situation. And it's measured in levels much like time is measured in increments of, different increments, either seconds or minutes or hours and so on. So you get 16-bit, which is really highly detailed in terms of what it gathers, and you get 256 levels, a much, much smaller number from 8-bit radiometric information. So you want to make sure that you get the right size for the project that you have. All right, this is probably the most important slide of the presentation. I'm not looking at all at questions. Mark, is there any questions or comments from people right now?
No, I don't see any questions yet. So we could.
You learning anything?
No, I don't see anything yet.
No, I ask, are you learning anything?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Great,
yeah.
great lesson. This one.
So it is not at all unusual that AI will make what you could collect without having AI 100 times better in 4 different ways. Speed, classify thousands of acres in minutes, for example, not weeks. Cost, most satellite data is free, which would be less than a single site visit would be. Accessibility, no PhD required. In other words, these data providers don't have a clue what your education is, and frankly, they don't. You can learn how to use it in anything in a very short period of time. Next one, pattern finding. It spots what a human eye wouldn't. It would miss across time, space, and spectrum. So now we're going to do a demo. And that demo is going to be of AI-assisted satellite imagery interpretation. And I'm going to grab some information from my AI assistant that I was just doing right before we started. So we're going to switch over from this slide, and we'll come back to it, to my browser. And we're going to look at Elma. These are data that I asked my assistant to collect from the Copernicus satellite, which is also, more specifically, there's 2 of them. It's what's called Sentinel-2 and Sentinel-1. And I'll show you exactly what those look like in a minute. And we're going to collect them from 2 sites that we've talked a lot about through the years. Rockville much more recently, and Mountain Sky Ranch. And we're going to get some very specific data, and we're going to see what does that mean about telling us about the sites and why that remote information is so valuable. And they're sites that I know really well because I worked on them. So here we go. We're going to grab some Copernicus first. Here we go. And here is a Copernicus. And I'm going to go back up first and show it to you on True Color. So this is County Road 31, South County Road 31, where I lived for 17 years. No, actually almost 20 years. This is our property. It started here and went bigger than is in this picture here right now. The data is still loading on it. Here we go. It's getting loaded up. And this is real time. This is data that's coming in right now from the satellite. And what it shows initially is the pond system, and I'm getting a little too close. It takes a little while to load. It'll come up here. The gate to the property was right here. The house we lived in was right here. Alpacas were in this area. I think this will get a lot clearer in just a second. This is another, what we call it the big house that we built up the hill. And then this is the long valley. Most anywhere down here near the bottom down here was in a meadow type of an area. So this was taken 3/26/26, and now I'm going to show it moving forward in time. Here's 4/5/26. Here's 4/7/26. Notice it's starting to green up more. Another one on 4/7/26. I think that's actually done. That's why it's not continuing. So now we're going to go backwards. The negative is that we had very little winter here at this site this year. So you're not going to see the snow cover that you would typically get. And we're going to look at other ways to view this in just a minute, but we're going to stick with the visual images and not going to go to the more unique ones. We're getting about the dead of winter right now. Yeah, so we're going to keep going backwards. And we're in the middle of winter here now, but still no snow. Not sure we're going to get any snow. So that didn't change much. Went all the way back to December 26th. Now we're going to view it using what's called NDVI, which is what will show effectively what's growing. And it's the NDVI means normalized difference in vegetation. So the brighter, darker green is the most vegetation. All the way down to black is essentially cloud cover. You can't see it. And white is bare rock. Well, look at how bare rock, gosh, I was on here earlier. Now it's going to make me go back. Oh, there it did. Look at where the bare rock is in our quarry. These are also other quarries. Remember, the pond system is right down here. And even in December, we had growing vegetation. Let's just see how it does as we get further along. Getting bigger. There's a little more green here. Although we're just still in February. Here's in probably where we finally did get some snow. But let's look back at true color. Hard to tell. It's still loading. Yeah, that is cloud cover or snow. So look at the difference there. Cool thing is it has so this is shortwave infrared composite, and that helps to show how much water is present in soil and plants. If you're seeing vegetation, it is in the green. Otherwise, remember, this is a lot of either snow or cloud that we had throughout most of these on this particular day. We have that short wave there. Let's look at NDVI. Last of the quarry input. And we're almost coming up to the present. All right, so now we're going to move sites. We're going to come to Idaho. We're going to do, this is Highway 95. And we're going to do Rockville. If I remember right, there might have been some cloud cover, which you're seeing pretty brilliantly here on some of the more recent dates. Actually isn't here on the 9th. So let's just see if we can. The problem is it's breaking off. We've got to let it load here a little bit more. because it's not showing us. We need to be right down here. A lot more clouds in the air this time. Here's the Rockville property right here. And we're looking at true color, so we don't have clouds. We're good with that. Need to go back there. We're going to look at NDVI. That is not NDVI, so I don't know what's going on with that. This should be showing a bunch of different colors, and there's some scars here, like right there, right over here, that should show up as white, like we saw. For whatever reason, this isn't loading right now. We're still just seeing the true color and not the NDVI. Come on. Go to another date, see how that one looks. There we go. Now it's starting to load. There it is. Now we have it. If you remember, again, we didn't have nearly the amount of green because in the previous, because we're not nearly into the growth season like we are here in Colorado. And here's the Rocks Road. Here's McBride Creek coming here. And what this shows is that this is the area that is still in the winter mode, and the green and even the darker green is where it's already beginning to really blossom and grow for the spring. So now let's try some of the others. Let's try the moisture index. Less moisture, the more in a drought situation we are. Well, this is a pretty low moisture situation. There's a little bit over here, but not much. Back to the NDVI. Here's our true color. And here's sort of optimized color. We didn't look at that at the other one. All right. So let's look and see, because I've done some previous analysis of this. Here's NDVI, excuse me, NDWI, which is the water index. And you want it to be blue. We're down here in this big time green. Ranch is right up here. All right, now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. And actually see what we found and how we did it. And we just did a lot of that. But the first is we're going to acquire it by pulling up a free Sentinel-2 tile. That's what we had. We're going to isolate the areas of interest and export them as PNGs or JPEGs. Then we're going to drop the image into Claude and we're going to ask plain English questions. All right. And then we're going to say, well, what's this bright patch? We're going to ask a prompt. Compare it to last year's image, draft a field note. So we're going to do that. And I've already done it. So we'll do it a second time after I show you what I've done. So I did it previously back on the 7th when I thought we were going to do this the same date, the 7th of April, actually. And with the two sites that we both saw, one of them not developed at all, Rockville, and the other one, Mountain Sky Ranch, where it's been developed for 20 years, using the same tool, the same satellite, the same AI, you see totally different stories. Again, we're going to go back. If you remember, what did you see there? You saw a high desert terrain in the McBride Creek. You saw two drainage channels converging, and then you saw dry and sparse. And that's just in true color. In the SCL and NDVI, you could see a lot more because it was showing you the drainage corridors exactly. It's showing the biological activities along water canals and channels. And it gives you restoration zones before you even step foot on the land. So the St. Vrain Supply Canal is in Colorado. And it was bright green in early April. So let's go back to that real quick. And this is back to Idaho. There's the McBride Creek. So let's go look at. This is the map that'll show you. It's the SCL. That's what it was talking about there, to where the green is the highly vegetated and wet area, and the yellow is dry. And then when you look at moisture index, you'll see some things somewhat similar, where the yellow, and then you have blue, where there's still snow, for example, in some places. And then you've got your NDVI, which shows truly where there's some growth occurring, and where there isn't at all. So now let's go back to Colorado. There's Carter Lake. We're in NDVI right now. Anything, the redder it gets, the more moisture. This is what it called the St. Vrain Canal right over here. That is a canal. Here's the system of water going through Mountain Sky Ranch right here, this red. On the NDVI, look at the moisture right here on the St. Vrain Canal. Look at the moisture down here at this little area of Carter Lake. That's urban, and there isn't much urban here. There's the moisture index. A lot of good moisture up at the tops, not so much down lower, and really low down the bottom because this was a drought winter. This is what's called shortwave infrared. Shortwave infrared. Again, a water index, which is really low, not good. It's all in the green. There's nothing you see here in the blue. And then this scene classification shows really what there is for water. And the reason that this is still not blue is this was frozen still at this time. All right, so now we'll go back to the Rockville Commons year 1 and Mountain Sky Ranch year 20. Measurably higher NDVI, which is the moisture levels than surrounding parcels, a lot better. It's got a managed riparian corridor that's visible from orbit. It's got biological complexity. It's been really well managed. Nothing yet for Rockville. So where are environmental professionals using this today? And we're not going to get to application 2. That's going to come up here. So we'll actually do a little bit of that next week and move into session 7 and next week also. But you can do deforestation monitoring. So you can track the canopy loss if there's a lot of lumber being taken off in certain areas. And you can even detect illegal logging where it's occurring. You're going to see glacial retreat and sea level rise, drought extent, heat islands. Decades of this kind of data is available. Habitat mapping, see where different species are, what's the extent of wetlands, where there are connectivity corridors where the animals can go. And this provides a defensible data for different kinds of permits and funders that are working in a particular area. Wetland restoration. What are sites that need restoration? They've been degraded. A lot of urban sites have been. So, you can use this remote data to help you to make decisions how to get these areas to recover. Brownfield and remediation. This is really useful for mining sites and different things where the surrounding land has not been impacted and the mine site itself has. And then obviously the biggest use is probably for agriculture and land use, where you can determine crop type, yield estimation, irrigation patterns. Really good farmer-friendly data for conservation programs. So the biggest tool here, the most powerful use, and this is what we're going to end on, is collecting it over time. You get a baseline when you start, store it, keep it, be able to use it again, and then look at it 2 or 3 years later and ask the AI to compare it for you. What changed? Where? How much? Why? So the next one is, again, the wetland site analysis that we'll do next week. And we'll do that from a little different way. We'll collect information from soil studies, hydrology, stuff with sensors on the ground instead of from satellites, like we just did. So, Mark, questions, comments from anybody?
Yeah, there is a question. Many people like Claude over ChatGPT or Gemini. So she's asking, which AI provider? Any thoughts on which one to use for specific
Great
purpose?
question. Really good. I try to use a lot of them. I think there's things that some are better at and things that others are better at. ChatGPT just came out with 5.5. It's a brand new version. It is a for-fee version. It's not available if you've got free ChatGPT yet. It will be soon. But I'm told it's in great improvement. I haven't used it that much yet. I'm a big-time Claude user. I like Claude a lot, so I probably use it as much or more than others. I think Perplexity is good. I think Gemini is coming a long way for Google. So, and then there's just new ones all the time. Big thing is use them. Don't be afraid of them. Don't worry about making mistakes with them. Just get out there and do it. Use them. And this is a great example, parcel to a memo in under an hour. This is for the wetland stuff that we'll look at next week, but it could fit for anything. Look up a parcel, find it, get your data, do a draft using AI, review and edit that draft. Make sure you put your knowledge back in. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. Don't want to do that. And then deliver it to the customer with whatever it is that they are looking for. All right. Anything else, Mark?
That's all for questions.
How about you? Yeah, you got any questions?
Yeah, so I saw you using Copernicus. How do we get to that site? And how we
Easy.
use it?
Yeah,
I mean,
good
that's
question.
yeah, that's
Let me get out of this.
mhm.
It's a browser,
Okay.
and it literally you can go in and do a Google search and just do a search for browser Copernicus or Copernicus browser, and it'll just come up, and you can use it anonymously, which is what
Mhm.
I'm doing, or you can log in, create an account. I think it's free. I have not done it because I can get everything I want just doing it free
Okay, great.
and
And
anonymously.
how does it compare to Google's satellite, Google
Oh,
Earth? Or
hugely better. One is
okay,
it's much more frequently covering a given location, maybe every other, every third, fourth, fifth day. But you get all these other color bands. You don't just get natural light, which is what Google Earth or Google Maps or Google My Maps, Apple Maps will give you.
awesome. Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah, try it for your country, Mark, where it'd be really different because you're in a much
Yeah,
wetter kind of environment. So,
right.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, everybody. Have